one. So if you could think about the biggest barrier that you've encountered so far, what has been your biggest barrier?
I guess I'll kick first. Biggest barrier is that we don't have enough micro schools. I had 50 students sitting on my wait list last year. 50. I just opened my doors last fall. So we don't have enough micro schools. I don't think that in Virginia people are educated enough and empowered enough to do what we're doing. And I think that having something like this is critical because we're sharing information and we're sharing success stories and we're sharing, hey, yours can be completely different than mine, but we can still serve so many kids. I want to say that there are so many children that need adults like us who are willing to step away and say, hey, listen, I got you. Like, let me go ahead and pull you in here. And this model may not be the same as the model that's 5 minutes down the road, but we are going to empower families and empower students to become their most best and incredible self. But I will say the biggest barrier for me is, like, please join us. Our kids need us. And families, parents need to be able to have autonomy over raising their child.
I have been obsessed.
All right, everybody, we are ready to start our micro school panel. I feel like we're already missing out on this conversation.
Yeah.
I'm excited. We're so lucky to have these four amazing individuals here with us that are in various stages of microschooling. Some are just starting out, some have been doing this for a couple of years, and some have been doing this for longer. So we will start out just passing the microphone down. Everybody will introduce themselves, tell us a little bit about their program and how long they've been operating. And then we'll ask a few questions and save plenty of time for you guys to ask your questions as well.
I'm going to start with you, if you wouldn't mind, just introducing yourself and telling everybody about what you're doing.
Okay, hi, I am Dr. Tanisha Roberts, and I started out with the Early Learning Center, but red tape is crazy and I don't want to keep dealing with government, so it organically started with the parents. They liked what I produced and they asked me about private school, and then I was like, that's not really my passion because I want autonomy as an educator, and so I started hearing about micro schools and lab schools, so I did some research on that. And then I was like, well, which one am I going to have more freedom with? And so a couple years ago, about a year and a half ago, I was like, oh, micro schools. So I started coming along, and then here I am. I have 3 kids that are starting in September, so.
Congratulations,
Yeah.
that's awesome.
Oh, yeah.
I'm in Essex, Virginia. It used to be Petersburg. It's South Chesterfield. It's that area by Virginia State University.
My name is Dr. Oren Livni. I'm from Norfolk, Virginia, and personally I call myself a school survivor, which that was really, that's why I'm there, because I had to go back to the war zone of my development. I started my journey, so I actually started my journey in 1992. So I worked there in I'm from Israel originally, so I work there in a public micro school that exists to these days. Has been for 50 years already in Jerusalem. And I made a switch. I was in academia. I made a switch, and I decided 2012 to open my own high school. This is my always interest was with the adolescent age, especially the high school age. That always been my passion because that was where I was broken the most. This is my wife, Anna, Dr. Anna Mirkova, who is my partner also in the school. We have one daughter who was then a preschooler, so we decided when she was in a Montessori school, we discovered Montessori in Norfolk. I decided that they run all the middle school. I decided that I wanted to have a high school and jump to the water, and 10 years later we are still on our feet, which is a bigger thing I can say. Our daughter just graduated this summer from our high school. She's going to college in less than a month. She's leaving us. And yeah, I'll stop here because I can talk about it endlessly. So.
My name is Mercedes Grant, and I am in Yorktown, Virginia. I opened my micro school Path of Life Learning this past fall. We had 33 students to start. This year, we have about 50 students. The demand is huge in my area. There's not a lot of school choice offerings. I am a military spouse. I serve lots and lots of military children from active duty families. I have taught in 4 different states around the nation, and I just kept hitting the same brick walls over and over, and some of the values within public education just conflicted with my values and my beliefs about students and children in general. So I opened this past fall, and it has been, oh my gosh, liberating, joyful, incredible, freeing, just amazing. So I'm really, really, really happy to be here with you guys. Also, my school serves kindergarten through 6th grade, and then we just plan to grow with our students, and also probably, it's looking like we will have more than just one micro school in Yorktown. I'm looking at other locations, just because the demand is so high. So good for Virginia. I think the people here are really trying to find things that are different, and parents are willing now to kind of step outside of the traditional model because they see other people doing it, and we're doing it really well.
My name is Sarah Harrington, and I am opening Solstice Hybrid Academy this August. I started my micro school journey basically a year ago, where I was enrolling my son in public school for the first time, and it from the teacher's perspective, it was different than a parent's perspective, and I was like, you know what, I just feel like I can provide him with a different experience, like so much more creative, exciting, adventure-filled learning experience. And so I bought a school bus and started converting it into a classroom. And I also live in Norfolk, Virginia. I plan on growing my school too, and I don't know, Norfolk really needs micro schools, so maybe we'll have like a whole fleet of magic school buses in Norfolk, Virginia one day. Which is so cool. So this is just like, it's been, going this route it's been very affordable for me to open a micro school on a school bus. And so it's this dream that is actually reachable. It's starting to happen, and I've got 5 families, 6 including my son, signed up. And now that the school year is approaching, more and more people are reaching out, and they want to know, like, what is the magic school bus way of learning? Like, how does that work? And I just see it growing more and more and more, and I'm excited to like teach my students not just in a classroom environment, but actually take them places and show them like how what they're learning in the classroom applies to real life. And so yeah, that's all.
So I would love to hear from each of you, and I think you all touched on it a little bit, but if we could just kind of delve in a little deeper about why. Why did you decide to launch a micro school? And you guys can answer in a row or jump around, whatever works for you, but yeah, whoever wants to kick us off with why did you decide to open a micro school?
Okay, I'll go first. I'm like an onion. There are many layers. I will start off with my own personal layer, where I went to public school, and I came from a very broken family with poverty and all kinds of obstacles in my way to be successful. And then I became a single mom, and I really, I didn't really know what to do. I loved kids, and I wanted to give back. And I always knew that part, but I didn't really know what to do. And so I decided to be the person that I never had growing up, and I was like, I really want to work with students and love them. And I was like, man, educators love kids so much, I'm gonna do this. And so then I got into public school and I realized that is not really what it is. There are people that want to transfer information through teaching, and I realized that teaching is so much more to me than transferring information. I want to have a community of students that are learning and engaging and loving one another and feeling that for me. And every time I moved, I was hit with a new challenge once I became a teacher, and I just heard so much negative language around students that were like me, around students that had disabilities, around students that came from different cultural backgrounds, about where the adults that don't necessarily have control over their outcome already decided what their outcome was going to be. And then COVID happened, and I didn't want my daughter to lose her innocence. My son just graduated high school. Also, he went through the public school system. But my daughter was kind of entering kindergarten during COVID, and I just didn't want her to lose that innocence in life. And I was so burnt out as a teacher. I was like, I can't do this anymore. I just can't. This is so hard because it just goes against everything that I stand for. Not everything, but many things that I stand for. So I decided, let's open this school. And instead of taking my classroom, because my students were safe in my classroom, but the second that they would walk out of my classroom door, it was everything just was so different. They weren't safe anymore. So I decided, let's see, is this gonna be real? Can I have a whole school with this same feeling and the same energy? And it was totally possible, and so it's just been amazing.
So the same thing, there are many layers, but I'll take the layer that recently has been in my mind. So first of all, with the Microschool, I discovered the term only recently because I constantly look for where is my own kind, because I feel so that I don't find my own kind, so I try and suddenly I fell on one of the news reports and I read, and especially when I saw the magic number of the 16, I thought, this is how we are, because we kept asking ourselves how we can go from the 16 up. So and then started and kind of sending emails and finally getting a very friendly reply that brought us here. But most recently, and I think it's very much connected to the fact that our daughter graduated, brought me back to the starting point when I thought I need to do that now, is because what has fascinated me for many years and actually kind of pained me was the fact that every little child smiles. And little children are so full with smile. And then as they grow, they lose the smile. Yeah. And then at some point with adolescence, there's a curtain go over their face, and they don't smile anymore, and then they go to adulthood and gradually become bitter. And I used to see, and I remember when looking at my daughter when she was 3, and smiling so much that kind of her face became crooked from her big smile. And I say, as a parent and as a person who lost my smile during adolescence and took me years to recover that, I cannot let this smile go away. And especially when it came to high school, and that was, I felt then when she was 3 that I gave her this promise, that I would do everything I can. And when we discovered that we don't have a high school choice where we are, and we didn't want to move because of her, because she was so happy where she was. So I said, these 4 years, this is my job, to save her smile. And that was the reason, the number one reason, but with the way that I felt that this is what we need to take ourselves to give the choice for children who want and their parents want to preserve, to cultivate and to nurture, that they smile, that they won't have to have curtain over their face, they don't have to protect themselves with the curtain. So this has been our motivation from always, and will be always our reason to do that.
reached this peak. And I just was looking at the state of education, and then I kind of diary sometimes just to, because as a kid I always knew I wanted to have my own school, I just didn't know what it would look like. And so I would just take data and just write it down, like, hey, if I had my perfect school, what would I do? What would I do? What would I do? So recently, in the last, like, 3 years, I found that book. And you never forget in your innocence of teaching, like, what you would think, you know, because you start out as a novice teacher and the world is so free in front of you, and then you get into the school system and you're like, oh my God. Right? But you have a heart, right? So you're going home crying and you're like, I can't believe these kids are going through this, they're going through that. But I went to school, I got all this school stuff going on, I want to stick with it. And so now, the fact that I realize now that I'm starting out in this area, I also have a parent that has a dream for her child. And she believes enough in me to, you know, be one of my founding students. Like, it's not just, yes, I'm a founder, but I have 3 founding students. And so now that's going to send a message in our area that hasn't really been on the forefront for microschool, private school, school choice, which is really needed in Petersburg area, South Chesterfield. So we're going to see what happens on this little experiment, and pray will flow.
You got this, you got this. Yeah, got it.
So I mentioned, like, my son was like a major inspiration for me to want to do this, but also I want to say the seed was planted in my mind when, at the beginning of the pandemic, when we were sent home, and I was a first-year parent, homeschooling my niece and nephew, and recording videos of me doing art projects to put on my Google Classroom for my students. And we would spend the morning doing like a project together. I would catch them up on all their work, and then we would get in the car and go to the zoo or go to the aquarium or go to a park. And it was so beautiful. I was like, why is school not like this? Like, why are we not like exploring the world or making the world like this feels so natural and organic. And when I went back to school, I really started focusing on connections. I was specifically taught art for public school for 8 years. I was a substitute teacher 2 years before that. And in my art class, I thought it was so important. This is the one place where I can encourage my students to explore things that they are interested in and talk to them about things that are going on in the world and make those connections for them. And so I worked on that for, I guess, the next couple years, and started trying to make momentum with my school district. And I realized, you know what, the only way I feel like I'm going to make a difference is if I break off from the path and start doing things differently. And then maybe people will start seeing me and feel and see how I made it happen and how they can do it too. So that was a big move. It was a really, really hard decision because I had that feel like I'm in public school because I'm gonna make a difference. And I'm gonna like help everybody and just do all these amazing things, but you know what, maybe I just needed a change of scenery to like really make the impact that I needed to.
All right. What has been, I know it's hard to pick just one, but if you could think about the biggest barrier that you've encountered so far, what has been your biggest barrier?
I guess I'll go first. Biggest barrier is that we don't have enough micro schools. I had 50 students sitting on my wait list last year. 50. I just opened my doors last fall. So we don't have enough micro schools. I don't think that in Virginia people are educated enough and empowered enough to do what we're doing. And I think that having something like this is critical because we're sharing information and we're sharing success stories and we're sharing, hey, yours can be completely different than mine, but we can still serve so many kids. I want to say that there are so many children that need adults like us who are willing to step away and say, hey, listen, I got you. Like, let me go ahead and pull you in here. And this model may not be the same as the model that's 5 minutes down the road, but we are going to empower families and empower students to become their most best and incredible self. But I will say the biggest barrier for me is, like, please join us. Our kids need us. And families, parents need to be able to have autonomy over raising you. Families need you, communities need you, and we need to take back education.
Amen.
Yeah, right.
So I guess I was invited to the panel as the kind of the wise elder because we are those were the most. And the thing is that being 10 years looks like a lot, but it's nothing. It's really nothing. In order to make consequences, in order to be really something serious, needs a lot of time. And it's very easy to start with enthusiasm and the dream, the thing of that. Keeping going on and doing that, it's extremely hard. And I have not enough words to express the hardness of that. And number one hurdle that I can see is enduring that emotionally, because you have to be very pragmatic, you have to be very practical, you have constantly to negotiate between what you believe and what is feasible. You have to deal with changing situations, and every new situation looks like the most. When COVID hit us and we said to ourselves, what are we going to do? What we are now confronting, COVID looked to me like nothing. It was so easy because we passed it. But every day dealing with the doubt, dealing with the up and down, dealing with the times that you think that things are going great and then things going down, and because this is reality. The most important thing is keep believing, keep going, keep seeing the value of that, keep kind of keeping the mojo, the freshness that you are here to start. Suddenly new schools start, these competition, these others, suddenly, I don't know, so many things, just name. But the idea here of being able to conquer the self-doubt and the desire to, I just want to have a normal job. I want to have an income. I don't want to feel suicidal anymore.
Right.
because it's so difficult. That I think this is if I think this is the number one difficulty, but we're here.
Wow, he was talking to me today. But yeah, that's so good. Transitions are so very hard because I definitely been going through some. I was like, man, this was rough. But for myself, just the legal stuff is such an issue, making sure you're aware. Sometimes you can feel isolated, like you said, because there's no connections to other people. It's really hard when you're like a pathfinder on this road and trying to find your way, because we thank God for people that have came and they're putting out little road signs along the way for us. But being a pathfinder, you gotta realize that you just have to grit sometimes and bear down and keep persevering, because you will want to tap out. But the thing is, the next generation needs us. Like, I'm a millennial. We need this little alpha generation and Gen Z that's coming up to be able to provide for us and sustain for us like we're doing for baby boomers and such, by being in the workforce and being productive citizens. So if we are there to contribute to just 10 kids, you're going to be better off in your community than without our contribution.
I think the most challenging challenging part for me, like what initially came to mind is like I was saying before, was making the leap. Like making the leap to like give up that just job that was secure and was providing me with a paycheck, and like I think Norfolk even like increased their teacher pay this year by like $5,000 or something, and I left and everybody kind of rubbed that in my face. And I was like, I'm an artist. I'm going to pursue my dreams. And so, not to mention, yeah, converting a school bus into a classroom, that's been quite a challenge, to be honest. But the whole experience, that initially, oh my gosh, I cried so many days when especially my very last day walking out of my school building, because I really did love my school. I didn't love the system, and I felt like I could do better with my 10 kids that are gonna enroll in my school, and that I was, you know what, I'm gonna cultivate and grow these makers and doers that are gonna go out into the world and just make this beautiful place where we can all just come together and it'll be amazing. And so I told myself that every single day when I was thinking about this journey, and that's like what got me through it. And I tried to surround myself with as many other people who were going through it too, and I found family and friends that were supporting me along the way. And of course, like I said, I came across a lot of naysayers that are like, that is like the craziest thing I've ever heard. Like, why would you do that? And I was like, I feel like this is what I need to do. And sometimes you just gotta follow your heart on that. And even though your mind is telling you like, this is terrifying, like, and you're just like, I'm just gonna jump, I'm just gonna do it. And so that was probably the most difficult part of this whole experience, for sure.
Okay, let's shift from biggest barrier to best moments. What has been one of your best moments on your microschooling journey so far?
I'll go.
I know. All right. Okay, so I always say I was a special educator, but I still am, because we still serve students with special needs and without special needs. But every time I think about this, because I get asked this all the time, right? Every panel, they're like, what is the greatest thing that's happened? And I always try to think of the best thing, but I gotta go back to these kids, right? Because as a special educator in public education, my students cried all the time because they could never pass their tests. And they didn't understand the math. Miss Mercedes or Miss Grant, I don't understand. I'm never gonna get this right. And report cards come out and they see failing grades. And that was devastating to me because I knew that doesn't matter. Like, that's not who you are, right? And I didn't feel like I could be in partnership with parents. But now on the other side, gosh, it just makes me tear up because we have students that are leaving traditional settings and they were failing. And then their parents are coming to me mid-year and they're like, listen, my kid is in 2nd grade and is depressed and crying. And I know what that feels like because of my childhood experiences, but not because school was too difficult for me. So you have children that come to us that leave a school setting that wasn't working for them, and then come and they are like so overwhelmed with joy and are learning and doing things that actually matter. Taking courses that they may never be exposed to until they're in high school taking an elective, but then again, they're special education, so they never get to take the electives because they're always an intervention, right? So you have a student that has a disability in math and struggles in math, and then guess what? We have a science presentation, and this little girl gets up in front of parents, in front of siblings, in front of all the students at Path of Life Learning, gets a microphone, presents based on a presentation that she created all by herself and crushes it. Like, does math matter at that point? Does a math disability matter? No. It's amazing because you start to really dig into what these kids are naturally gifted and talented at, and you don't have to focus on those things that make them cry anymore. So that's just been one of the beautiful things, is just tapping into, why did God place you here on earth? What are the things that you're really good at, and let's go ahead and focus on those things.
Amen.
So the best moment in my track is actually my favorite place in school. So where we are, I have kind of a shelf that I have there standing the few things. I don't like to keep things. I'm not a hoarder, but the things that I need to look at them to remind me who I am. And one of them is a small kind of a wooden a laser engraving makerspace that one of the first students he created the name of the 3 students in my first class. We were 3, and me, that I framed it, and I have that. I have our accreditation certificate that's for the parents. Don't care about that. And I have the pictures of the 2 people that I need to look at them every day and to get their approval spiritually. Maria Montessori and Janusz Korczak, who was a Jewish humanist educator and Holocaust victim. And then the best present I ever got, which is the one I wanted to answer. And that was a graduation present of my most difficult student ever, a tiny girl who was kicked out even from the French school. Even Quakers could not take her. She was such a mess, and she was a huge mess. And her mom didn't believe me that I would take her, and I said, take her. And so during the COVID year, we were in an outdoor classroom. We created an outdoor classroom where for a whole year in a tent in a parking lot, because we wanted to have in-person school. And she was a kid on the spectrum, and very spectrumy kid. She was called herself AAA. Anxiety, autistic, and ADHD. She used to come to school with a small box and tweezers. And during that entire year, whenever she had time, she used to go to the ground, the parking lot, and to collect tiny pieces of broken glass. And ask her what? She refused to say. And for a whole year, she cleared the entire ground from glass. There was no. She started digging in the ground, and we had to force her to stop because kids started tripping into the holes that she created. So at the end of the year, she came to me towards her graduation and brought to me a frame art piece that she created with the logo of the school, with our colors, made from all the broken glasses that she made. And now I explained to her, and I'm sorry because every time I tear when I say it. She said, I came here shattered to pieces.
Oh my God.
And she said, I still feel broken many times, and her life continued to be struggle. I'm not telling you any story about now she's struggling these days. But she said, the chance that you gave me is 4 years. I felt that I could make something complete out of my shatters. And this is for you. And I had her just by Maria Montessori. And every day when I come to the building and I come to school, I look at that and I remember her, that I owe her. And this is the most beautiful moment I ever had.
That's a good viewpoint. So just right now, being a newbie on this bus, I just want to say that the excitement, the newness, the enthusiasm, the trust that the parents have in coming to me and inquiring about it and pushing my dreams to reality as well as their dreams to reality is one of the most exciting things. So hopefully I have the emotional endurance to last to the end, like you said.
I want to say to bounce off of that is that we get a lot of kids fit in the box. And even though I'm not operational, I have families come and visit me all the time because they want to see, what is this, what's going on? I don't understand. So I have families come and they bring their children, and they immediately, like, from homeschool kids who never get to go on a school bus to like the traditional kids who are like, this is amazing, like it's a completely different environment. And so the best thing is that I don't want to harp on public school, because I feel like in public school you have so many opportunities. There's so many resources and things that homeschool and maybe some other kids, other organizations don't have access to. But what if you can create a school that does have all of these things? And like, why do you have to pick this way or that way? Why are we putting ourselves in a box when we can create this vision and this space where the kids show up and it's got everything they want, everything that makes them excited. It's got all the things that they wake up, and when they know they're going to school, they are excited to do that because they know that they're going to get the instruction that they want. They're not going to be pushed and prodded into doing things that they don't want to do, and they're going to get to go into the parking lot and collect a whole box full of broken glass, and they're going to get to do all these different things that they want to do, and to put all these restrictions on their creativity and their interests and themselves. You're not allowing them to thrive and grow. So I think that's the most exciting thing for me, is meeting my potential families and students and seeing what they're excited about. And for the families to realize that, like, education doesn't have to be this way or that way. It can go like this, you know? It can be whatever you want it to be.
I do want to save plenty of time. I feel like I could ask you guys questions all day, but I want to save time for you all. Do you guys have any questions for any of the Microschool founders up here?
Just to each of you, I know maybe some of you have been in this longer than others, but what does a typical school day look like at each of the different ones? Because I was just thinking, Montessori, I don't think high school, so this would be really interesting for me to learn.
So actually, Maria Montessori envisioned education from 0 to 24. So that's the idea, is the whole span of child development. She just managed during her lifetime to create the 3 through 6. Her son created the 6 through 9, and then she created the 0 through 3. But she endorsed the first Montessori high school in Netherlands, 1950, that exists to these days. The biggest Montessori high school that exists in the world is in India, and I think it's about 5,000 students. Yeah, it's public. So now the problem is that I would love to give a whole presentation of how the structure of the day. Of course, it's impossible, but it is the way that the Montessori day is structured in the younger levels. Just started structured to support the developmental needs of adolescents. So, and it is structured in free time, which more individual time, call it what we call work cycle, and then seminars. The most important thing here is that the way that we are structured, there's no one model for Montessori high school. Unlike the younger kids at the Easy Canon, high schools is still experimental field. We are part of the experiment. But in our school, what is special is the fact that I tell all of the parents that we have 2 campuses. Is the building, and then everything behind the door, you know, the world outside us is our campus. So our school day is structured between the things that we do indoors in our space and the thing that we do outdoor with all our partners. And I think partners is a all wonderful topic that I think that I would love to, if we can ever expand on that, to talk about partners that we have basically, this is a very important part of our structure is the work that we do with our partners.
Sure. I'm gonna make this as brief as possible because like you said, I could probably expound upon it, but we have students starting off in their cohorts. We have 3 cohorts, K1, 2, 3, and then 4 through 6. And they start off in their cohorts with a daily devotional and they have their morning meeting, they make goals for themselves, and then they do academics up until lunchtime. Their academics are mostly, depending on the grade level, some of them are more structured, teacher-led, the lower grades, and then the older grades are more independent and self-paced. And then we have about 90 minutes for a picnic-style lunch and recess. And then in the afternoons, we do clubs, so student-led clubs. We have what we call Grow Your Brain, where students are getting some kind of intervention or enrichment in the academic setting, but it's more like a study hall where they get teacher support. And then we have specials, which is the same thing, kind of in traditional education, where they have the adult come in and teach some lessons to small groups, music, sign language, posture and prayer. Some of those are examples.
So, first the parents bring their kids to my school bus, and then in the morning we do guided learning on the bus. I've installed work benches for them to work, and there's a bathroom, there's like a little chill space. And after students get their work done in the morning, we have lunch, and then we buckle up and I drive them to a place that supports that subject. So instead of like a traditional learning environment where they take a subject every day, or like all the subjects every day, like half hour of science, half hour of math, half hour of language arts. I devote one day to one subject. And so we're concentrating on science. We're going to do our science assignments on our learning platforms, and then we're going to go to the Maritime Museum, or we're going to go to the Air and Space Museum, and just reinforce that knowledge by immersing ourselves in this experience.
That's very cool.
So I utilize an integrated learning model, so that's it's a little similar to project-based learning, but since we're starting off with the K1 concept, that means it's student choice, so they say, hey, I want to learn about music this semester, but we're going to integrate core content subjects into that thematic unit for that month. So I've been working on a theme, so, fall, those type of different options, but it's also because what I found is that I might like math more than reading, so I'm going to sneak a subject in here that they may not like so that they're learning while they're not paying attention to it. So that's what I do.
So it sounds like Mercedes, you're getting ready to launch another microschool. My question is, if you all had to do it again, what would you do differently this time around?
Anybody want to go first on that? I don't know. That's a good question.
I think the principle that I would like to modify a bit the question, and this is something I learned from thinking with my daughter years back when she used to dance and being afraid of forgetting the choreography. And I'm not a dancer, and I'm bad with the instructions. So I thought about it and I told her, the only thing that you need to think about is where I am now and what's the next step.
Mm-hmm.
So if I had to start it again, I would have been 10 years, 12 years older, in a different situation. I even wasn't a citizen then. So things were different for me, or other things. The question is where you are and what's your next step. This is the only question that I recommend asking. And things change all the time because everything changes all the time. So if I had to start it again, I would have started wherever I am now and what's the next step. So, and anyhow, where I am now is the point zero of where I am now. So I start it again every day. And the next step, our next challenge is where we're taking it. So you're always you always start it again, whatever you do. And I think this is the important thing to remember, especially if it is your business. If you don't live on secure funding, every year is your year zero. You start where you are, and then what's the next step?
TaskRabbit. That's one thing I would do differently is when I'm trying to open a school, so get all of the legal side, everything, but then I'm also preparing this classroom at the same time. Figuring out a way to like find a help and to make the vision come to fruition versus and sometimes that means hiring somebody who's knowledgeable to help you with the task. It probably would have saved me a lot of arguments with my husband if I had just hired somebody to help me with the bus conversion rather than making him do a lot of it. So that's what I would do. If anybody decides to open up another schoolie in my town, I would immediately refer them to like hiring a contractor to come and do a job, for sure.
My husband is also building maintenance. He's not good with kids. Except my own sometimes. But I actually am gonna say exactly what you said. Like, I can't even go back. I think the biggest thing is being okay with change or with criticism, because I'm already so hard on myself. Then to hear anyone else be like critical was really hard because you try to take everything personal. So I will reframe to advice. To don't take everything personal, to change when you need to, because this is permissionless. We do what our communities need us to do. And also, even 2 years ago, think back 2 years ago, there was so much less, there were so many fewer resources. This has just blown up over the past 2 years. You guys have people now to rely on, to find resources through. I mean, you asked the budgeting question, like 2 years ago, there was no template for anything. So just follow others is my other piece of advice for you, because you guys are kind of essentially almost set up for success if you're able to find some people and some businesses, some organizations to model and to listen to this fantastic advice.
For me, just make sure that you never stop believing in yourself, and you always have faith for what it is that you need, and that you can trust in your resources that you have to get what you need. Because, I was like, I did a middle compromise where I said, let me start off with a daycare, but that's been more of a headache in changing over than anything. Yes, it provided financial resources like leaving K-12 education like she did, and then trying to say, okay, I need to have a security net. So you have that for those years, but now you're changing and you're like, I'd just rather kick the bucket on that. So just make sure that if I had enough faith to believe that I could get what I wanted at that time, at that moment, in that day, then now you have to kind of retake and rework and rewire things to fit what it is that you're doing now and where God is taking you now. So just make sure that you are willing to trust what you know inside your heart and follow that pathway.
We have time for one last question. Does anybody have one final question? Oh,
perfect. Thank you. See you.
Hello.
Hi.
So my question is about the less than happy scenario. So you've done everything you're supposed to do as an educator. The parents are on board, but you have a student that, despite all your efforts, they are not going to meet the milestones necessary. How do you deal with that, and what does that conversation look like with the parents, and when do you decide to, if necessary, to terminate that
Relationship.
that relationship?
Yeah.
Because, like, you know, it's just not going to work, despite your best efforts.
What grade level or age? I think that's important to consider too.
But what would it look like at each different grade level? Because I didn't think about it. So what would it look like at each, like, what would it look like for grade school, middle school, and then high school?
Well, I think the biggest thing is to come up with a plan, right? And I would say this to everyone, is make sure that you have this as a plan. I think it's really, really hard, and I've seen founders, and Ashley, I'm sure you've seen founders that struggle with this so much because our hearts are poured into this. This is very personal for us. We don't want to turn away anyone, yet there are some students that are not necessarily going to be successful. And I think coming up with a plan and saying, okay, we're going to try this, and this is already something that you've thought about, right? So you can meet with the parents and say, hey, these are some of the things that we've noticed, this is what we're trying to do, let's go ahead and come up with a plan in partnership. Because the thing is that the parents also have to be held accountable too, right? So you definitely want to have a partnership with the parents, you have a plan in place. I would say sometimes we are not the best fit. And when you cut ties with the students that are causing other students to not have a positive educational experience, you really have to think about all of the kids. Like, yeah, this kid is a pain in my rear, but really what is happening within the entire classroom setting? And is this student going to be successful here? And are the other students going to be able to be successful? And while we have so many tools in our tool belts, I mean, I'm a special educator, I've worked with so many different types of students and situations. I think it's really important to consider that some relationships are not going to work, and your setting may not be the correct setting for all students, but I do think it's important to say that it's not working and to go ahead and cut ties and to give resources. When you let the parents go but also provide them resources, I think that's really important, because then they still feel empowered, even though it's a hard conversation to have. And then I would say to approach it based on the child's level. Obviously, when you have younger children, you're going to have some more things that you can do with them to try to help them to be successful, whereas you can talk for high schoolers, a lot of times you have to undo all of that negative, all of the negative things that have already happened to create this child that's standing in front of you today. So a lot of that, I think you can definitely speak on the high school experience, but a lot of times it's hard and it does take time, and then you just have to think about what your values are as an educator and founder.
I think that this question does not exist in reality, because there is nothing that is called a child who is not successful. Because every child and everyone has one's own development and one's own milestones. Now, sometimes these milestones will align much closer with normative milestones. Sometimes they are not. But other milestones are legitimate not less than the normative ones. Our job is to help child develop. Whatever it means, it means. Now, we are constantly, we live in a reality, we have to constantly negotiate between the individual needs and the communal needs. And it's a negotiation, it's a process of negotiation that we constantly have to think about how we do that together. I'll give you an example. We had a child that got with physical disabilities, physical challenges, let's say, I don't have to say disability challenges. And one of the issue of this child that there was a disconnection with body needs. and sometimes of not knowing that she needs to go to the restroom. And when the parent came and talked to us about it, they said, no problem. We have a shower in school. And said, just bring extra clothes. And then before the child joined us, we said together all the community, and I told them, this child is going to join us, and this is the challenge. And we were going to all to accept it as something normal, because this is a challenge. And there's nothing here that we're going to make about it. We're not going to comment on that. It's something that we're going to deal, and I told them what the arrangement was. And that was the reality. I had a student that in high school, I had to teach division, the operation of division. And we did it by this kid like snakes. So we used to divide with pencils as snakes. I had kids who did calculus in 8th grade, so it doesn't matter. The idea is that the child milestone is the child milestone. And if the parent is, the only question, if you have the parent on board. If the parent is on board and cooperate and is partner with you, you'll never have to ask the question if I need to depart from the child. No, the opposite. And the more diversity that you have kids who live together, and this is the milestone of this kid, and this is the milestone of the other kid, and they learn how to cooperate and how to respect and each other milestone, and maybe even adopt each other milestone, I think that your community is much better. So I don't think that you will ever need, we never had to ask this question as long as the parent is on board. The only problem is when the parent is not on board with the school and with the school work, and then you can say, okay, maybe you should take a different preference. That won't work for you. For the child, if the parent is on board, everything will work.
So from my perspective too, you want to also make sure, because your heart's in it, and you can sometimes feel attacked if you're getting ready to transition a child out of the center. Like, you've done everything that he said done. You've tried different plans, you tried to work together, you put in protective measures, and you found that it's not the least restrictive environment, or it's not an environment
With that. Now they're at your school and they're still not happy with that. First, ask yourself, like, how long has this been? How much time do I have to establish a plan for them? And like, let's try different strategies. Like, what's the need here? Why? It's like a puzzle. It's a puzzle to figure out what's not happening, what's not working. And before you even sign these children up, these families up to your school, is already establishing that culture. Like, talking to them and saying, like, we're building this school together. We're building this school together. You're signing on, like, this is your school too. And you're coming on with me, like, I'm gonna be guiding your child through this curriculum, but we're communicating every day. And whatever's happening in this environment, you're gonna know about it. And when something's not working, we're gonna work together to figure out the why, so that inevitably, when we decide this just isn't the space for your child, we're all in agreement with that. And because that's just the truth too. Like, my environment's not gonna be for every child. And so it's really important to have more and more micro schools, so that the children who need a specific environment can get that service. And so when encouraging more schools, having those conversations with your families, developing those relationships that, like, let's face it, those relationships are hard to establish in a traditional school environment. And a micro school is so different because you do have those relationships with your families, and you just want to make sure that it's not about money. You're not like enrolling people just so that you can get a paycheck. You're creating this vision because you have a passion for educating these children, and the parents who are paying the tuition have a passion for their children's education. And once you come to that agreement, then you're okay. You're okay when it doesn't work out. So.
Can I add something?
Yeah, of course.
So I would like to refer back to my other great education hero, Jan Schwarczyk. And there are two things that from him that guide me. He had a big question. His question was how to love a child. And the answer he gave was to remember there's not such a thing, bad child. There's only a child who feels bad. So this is where we are fortunate in the setting that we are part of, is that we're not flooded by huge amount of children and a lot of kind of big organization where our entire commitment is to guarantee that every child will feel well. What it means is differs from child to child. And sometimes we can provide that, sometimes we cannot provide it. But our commitment, our own commitment, is to love each child by doing everything we can that this child will feel well. That's all.
Thank you so much for joining us on the panel. It was so wonderful to hear from each of you and your different models and the different stages that you're at in your journey. So thank you so much for sharing your expertise with us. Before I hand this back over to Craig to wrap up, I just want to